Everyone. Today at Drawing Club we're drawing Henrietta eggs Benedict. This is Duchess Henrietta eggs Benedict, and to draw her you'll need a pencil and an eraser to erase any mistakes, and maybe a pencil sharpener to sharpen your pencil with, and you'll need a black pencil crayon or a black marker to outline her with after you're finished drawing. You'll also maybe need some color pencils or some color markers to color her in with. But as usual, I'm going to use this grey marker to draw her just so you guys can see what I'm doing. Now, as the same as the last few times we've done this, when we've had one of these characters from these silly stories about Percival Pigworthy, I've drawn the picture and then I've told you the story over the top of it. So as usual, you can just follow along with what I'm doing with my marker. And of course, you can pause the video if I'm drawing too quickly. But instead of talking you through each stage of the drawing, I'm going to just tell you a silly little story about the Duchess Henrietta eggs Benedict and her friends Veronica Vole and Percival Pigworthy, the famous pig detective also known as Hog Mild. So here we go. We got one more story, and then if there's time at the end again, if the story's not quite long enough, we'll just play a little bit of music until the video ends. Okay. So let's start with this story about Duchess Henrietta eggs Benedict. Duchess Henrietta eggs Benedict was excited. It was a perfect June day. The sun was shining, there was the slightest breeze, and the grass outside her country manor house was lush and green. She called out to her butler, an old basset hound named Jervis. "Jervis! Have the hampers been packed to my exact specifications?" The old hound entered the study, blinking his red eyes. "Yes, Mom." 2 dozen hot cross buns, 2 dozen plain scones, 2 dozen raisin scones, 50 raspberry turnovers, and 12 blueberry muffins?" "Yes, Mom, all present and accounted for," said the butler. "And we have enough jam, cream, and butter?" "Yes, Ma'am. I also took the liberty of making up a large urn of Darjeeling and Lady Grey tea, and of packing honey, milk, and lemon slices, since you didn't mention what you wanted to drink on your picnic." "Very good, Jarvis. Have the guests arrived?" "Yes, Ma'am. Mr. Pigworthy and Lady Vole are in the drawing-room now." "Excellent. Tell the servants to prepare the garden. Put down the best picnic blanket we have and begin arranging the foodstuffs. If I know Mr. Pigworthy, the poor man will be hungry from the long ride out here." "And will any other guests be arriving, Ma'am?" asked the old basset hound. "Goodness, no," said the Duchess. "Then all that food is just for the 3 of you?" said Jarvis, his eyebrow raising just a little in surprise. "I don't see what business that is of yours, Jarvis. But yes, Mr. Pigworthy is a man of some appetite, and when he's around, well, it's better to have too much food on hand than too little." "Very good, Ma'am," said the butler, and turned to leave. "Oh, and Jarvis," added the Duchess, "you have been keeping an eye on that new kitchen girl, Jenny, haven't you? I'd hate to think of anything going missing while Mr. Pigworthy is here. He is a famous detective, you know, and he always gets to the bottom of his case." "Yes, especially if it's a case of cupcakes," muttered the butler quietly. "What was that?" said the Duchess, her eyes flashing. "Nothing, Ma'am. I'll just go and see to everything, shall I?" "Yes, see that you do. And keep an eye on that Jenny." "Yes, Ma'am," sighed the old basset hound as he turned and went back to the kitchens. An hour later, Duchess Henrietta eggs Benedict, Lady Veronica Vole, and Percival Pigworthy were sitting on a large red and black checked blanket out on the lawn, sipping tea from gold-rimmed teacups. "I say," said Percival, "I don't suppose there's any food left, is there? I'm still a bit peckish." "But, Percival, You've already had 40 raspberry turnovers and heaven knows how many scones and hot cross buns, said Lady Veronica. Now, interrupted the Duchess. I'm sure Mr. Pigworthy knows whether he is hungry or not. I believe there are some blueberry muffins in that small hamper behind you. Thank you, Duchess, said the pig detective, leaning back and opening the wicker basket. He pulled out a muffin and with relish bit into it. A moment later his eyes bugged out of his head and the mouthful of muffin shot out of his mouth and landed in the grass with a splap. Goodness gracious, what's the matter? Asked Lady Veronica, patting the gasping pig on his back. A terrible crime has been committed here, said Percival as soon as his voice came back. Whatever do you mean? Demanded the Duchess angrily. Those are no blueberries in that muffin. They are merely cranberries, sugared and dyed blue. With a cry, the Duchess threw a feathered hand to her head and promptly fainted. 20 minutes later, they were back in the manor house. The Duchess was laying on a couch with a cold compress on her head, and all the servants had been gathered in the drawing room. Ladies and gentlemen, said Percival quietly, we have a mystery, and, as some of you may know, I am a detective, known to the newspapers as Hog Mild, investigator and solver of crimes related to baked goods and desserts of all kinds. The assembled servants looked at the floor worriedly as the pig began walking backwards and forwards on the carpet, speaking his mind aloud as he thought his way through the case. Now, these are the facts as we know them. After enjoying an excellent picnic of raspberry turnovers and hot cross buns, I bit into a muffin purported to be full of blueberries, only to discover that, in fact, it was full of cranberries, disguised as blueberries. Cranberries! The shame of it! Cried the Duchess from her couch, before fainting again. Lady Veronica held the Duchess's hand and fanned her face with an antique Japanese fan. Percival turned to the head cook, Mrs. Butterworth, a matronly pheasant. Mrs. Butterworth, you did the cooking this morning, am I correct? That I did, Mr. Pigworthy, sir, she replied, seemingly close to tears. Well, let me commend you. The scones, buns, and turnovers were quite delectable. Thank you, sir, she nodded. But I must ask you, were you aware that you were using fraudulent blueberries in the muffins? No, sir, I had no idea. Well then, may I ask you where you obtained these deceitful berries? Well now, said the head cook, looking this way and that, before hanging her head in shame. No, sir, I'm afraid I can't. Can't say or won't say? Dash it all, ma'am, we must get to the bottom of this case. Otherwise, how can we ever bite into a tart or Swiss roll and trust that we are getting the honest, law-abiding fruit filling we expect? It was me, sir, came a squeak from the corner. It was a small mouse in a white apron and bonnet. Jenny, no, said Mrs. Butterworth. I don't care, Mrs. Butterworth. You've been kind to me, and if I lose my position here, then so be it. I won't have you taking the blame for my mistakes. Ah, Miss Jenny, can you kindly explain to us what happened? Well, sir, this morning I checked the larder for blueberries, just as Mrs. Butterworth had asked. Only, I found there were none. But, as look at it, a door-to-door berry salesman just happened by the kitchen a few minutes later, and he had a small punnet of blueberries for sale. And it was these unprincipled cranberries masquerading as blueberries that he sold you? Yes, sir, but I didn't know they were false berries, sir, and Mrs. Butterworth certainly didn't know. I believe you, girl, but before I consider this case closed, may I ask you this question? The man who sold you these berries, was he by any chance a large rat with a drooping moustache?" "Yes, Mr. Pigworthy, but however did you know that?" "Because we have met once before. Consider yourself lucky, Jenny, for this morning you met one of the most dangerous men in England, Jim Beriarty." "Beriarty!" exclaimed Lady Veronica in shock. "Yes, Beriarty, the Napoleon of culinary crime. There isn't a false fruit or stodgy filling in the land that he hasn't had a thumb in." Oh, Percival, what are you going to do?" asked Lady Veronica. "Well, first let's get the Duchess some smelling salts. When she wakes up, I want you all to agree to this story. We will tell the Duchess that I was mistaken, and that the cranberries were in fact blueberries after all." "But, Percival, the Duchess will surely know if she tries one of the muffins. She has very sensitive tastes, you know." "There's only one thing for it. I will have to eat the rest of the evidence before she wakes up. Bring me the other 11 cranberry muffins. I won't have innocent, good-hearted people like Mrs. Butterworth and Jenny losing their jobs because of that bounder Beriarty." "Oh, Percival, you're my hero," said Veronica happily. "It's nothing really. Now, let's get back to London so I can get on Beriarty's trail. Come, Veronica, the game is afoot." Okay, so that is the end of this week's Percival Pigworthy, also known as Hogmile the Detective story. And it looks like we are actually just about at the end of drawing the video as well. Or drawing the video? Making the video and drawing the Duchess. So that's perfect timing. So I'll just bring back out the color version here, and you can take a look at the way I colored her. I colored her, most of her feathers brown, but then her comb on her head is red, and her beak is yellow. But you can color her any color you like.